Hey guys, welcome back to Pistons Talk Podcast. Hope you guys are having a great weekend and you're ready to talk some Detroit Pistons basketball with me. Got a bunch of stuff to get into today, but let's start with probably the most trending news right now, the president of basketball operations. Now, last night we got a breaking news article from Vinny Goodwill and Jake Fisher over at Yahoo Sports. Now, we've tried to cover this president of basketball operations search. There's been a lot of names thrown out there. There's been a lot of pipe dreams thrown out there. But now we have four guys that are leading candidates, front runners, if you will, to become the next president for your Detroit Pistons. And I'm going to put it on the screen for you guys to see. And this is a snippet from the Yahoo Sports article. It says Trajan Langdon, Scott Perry, Dennis Lindsey, and John Hammond have impressed in interviews and are frontrunners to meet with Pistons owner Tom Bores as the franchise hopes to fill the position before next month's NBA draft. I'll just kind of give you guys a quick little breakdown of each of these candidates. Maybe you're not too familiar. I'll start with John Hammond. John Hammond should sound familiar. He was in the Detroit Pistons front office during the going to work era with Joe Dumars. After that, he went to the Milwaukee Bucks. He was the GM that swung for the fences and drafted Giannis Antetokounmpo. He also drafted guys like Malcolm Brogdon and others. And since then, he had left the Milwaukee Bucks front office and currently is a senior advisor for the Orlando Magic. And look at all the success Orlando's having. He's been advising the Orlando Magic's GM on a day-to-day basis. So that's what he has been doing. That's John Hammond. Dennis Lindsey worked in the Utah Jazz front office for several years, worked his way up to the ranks, left Utah for a little bit, went to San Antonio from 2007 to 2012, and then came back to Utah and eventually did step down and handed the keys over to new people over there like Danny Ainge and others. So he's kind of worked his way up the ranks. He's up there with John Hammond in terms of having a proven track record and building a team and just being a stable voice in the front office. So that's Dennis Lindsey. Scott Perry, again, that name should sound familiar. He's a Detroit native. He worked in the Detroit Pistons front office, much like John Hammond. He was there during the going to work crew as well. He was a scout, a college scout at one time. He was a player of personnel. And he worked with the New York Knicks front office, really cleaned their cap space, cleaned their books, and eventually stepped away. Currently, he's an ESPN analyst right now. He's from Detroit. I don't really know if that really holds any weight. I know some people mentioned that we got to get more of our own people in the front office to understand the culture and all that stuff like that. But that is worth noting. He is from Michigan. And last but not least, Trajan Langdon from the New Orleans Pelicans. Before the Pelicans, he was with the Brooklyn Nets organization, and then before that, he was with the San Antonio Spurs. And you can kind of look at the Pelicans, getting guys like Trey Murphy, getting guys like Herb Jones, Dyson Daniels. They have drafted very well, and Langdon has been there in their organization as their general manager. So those are the four candidates. Those are the four front runners. Now, it is worth noting, because I know some people are going to ask about Tim Connolly. The article yesterday from Yahoo Sports did mention that the Pistons are still interested in Connolly, but the Timberwolves are in Game 7 right now against the Minnesota Timberwolves. So if you're a Piston fan, you're a Nuggets fan tonight. And let me explain why. You want the Nuggets to bounce out the Timberwolves so the Pistons could possibly talk to Tim Connolly. I'm not telling you guys how to fan, but like if you want the Pistons to possibly talk to Tim Connolly, that's probably the only way you could do it, because if the Timberwolves beat the Nuggets, you're probably not talking to Connolly until June. That's just how it is. And I know he's a guy that was on my wish list, as I told you guys. Like, I loved Tim Connolly here. Just all the success that he had with the Denver Nuggets, built that team, drafted guys like Jokic and Murray, and, made trades for Aaron Gordon and others. Just done a really phenomenal job with that. And then going to Minnesota and just, going there and building stability. And they're neck and neck with the Nuggets right now. Like, two of the teams that are probably favorites to, make it out of the Western Conference Finals, versus the Dallas Mavericks, are either going to be the Timberwolves or the Nuggets. So, I mean, he's built two powerhouses. So I could see why the Pistons really want to wait and see what happens with him. But fingers crossed that the Nuggets do win. Just in case, he does want out of Minnesota. He does want to opt out of his contract, and it sounds like he wants to get paid. So, hey, you never really know what's going to happen in these front office, in these organizations. But I did want to update you guys on that and kind of talk about just this whole president of basketball operations situation. It's been so chaotic to try to follow. Reading these articles from different publications, little tidbits here and there, but basically that's all we know for the president. We got 4 candidates. They're going to meet with Gores. Who's to say he doesn't pull what he pulled last year with, Monty Williams? We had coaching candidates like Charles Lee and, others. And then they're like, oh, hey, like, how about Monty? Like, he could probably do the same thing and say, hey, how about Tim? You never really know, right? Again, you guys, like, I tried my best to, just really keep up with this saga, because it's been absolutely wild. And hopefully we do have a president before the NBA draft. Hopefully. Before we do jump into the second topic of this podcast, we have to have a word from our sponsors over at Game Time. I want to talk to you guys about today's sponsor, Game Time. Now, if you're like me and you love going to Detroit sports events, or maybe you want to be a big baller and go watch some NBA playoffs live, Game Time has got you covered. You guys, they have last-minute ticket deals, flash deals, zone deals, and much more. With it being baseball season, I was looking earlier in the app. You can go to a Detroit Tigers game right now for under $5. I mean, you can't beat that with summer coming up. I also want to talk to you guys about one of my favorite features in the Game Time app is they have views from all seats in the venue. Now, what I mean by that is when you click on the ticket that you're looking at, you get a 360-degree view of where you're going to be sitting and how close you would be getting to the action in the Game Time app. If you go over and download the Game Time app and use promo code CHATSPORTS, you'll get $20 off your first purchase. Again, if you go over and create an account with Game Time and use the promo code CHATSPORTS, CHATSPORTS, you're going to get $20 off your first purchase with the Game Time app. All right, you guys. So the next topic I wanted to talk to you guys about is a Bleacher Report mock trade that I saw throughout the week. We reacted to it on this YouTube channel. If you want to check that out, go for it. I'm kind of going to be reacting to it again, because maybe some of you don't follow me on Twitter. Maybe some of you didn't see the video I posted. So there was a mock trade that Bleacher Report proposed. If the Atlanta Hawks were looking to move off their first overall pick. Now, I've told you guys, like, I don't really know what the Hawks are going to be doing. There's been so much speculation. If the Hawks want to rebuild, this makes it even easier for them to rebuild. If they want to retool and maybe trade a piece or two, and just, keep the first pick, whatever, or if they just want to tear it down and just start fresh, I guess they could do that now that they have the first overall pick. But I'm going to put the trade on the screen for you guys, and we're going to be reacting to it. So this is the trade that Bleacher Report proposed if the Hawks wanted to trade with the Detroit Pistons. So the Pistons would send over Asar Thompson, Jaden Ivey, and the Pistons' 2024 first round pick, 5th overall, in exchange for DeJounte Murray and the Hawks 2024 first round pick, 1st overall. So when I was looking at this trade and when I was kind of thinking about it from the Pistons perspective, that trade to me kind of seems like a win now situation where you feel that DeJounte Murray could elevate your franchise to be a lead guard next to Cade Cunningham. And you're banking on Alex Sarr to become this two-way potential center, starting caliber center that, you could build around. And I gave my takeaways on it a couple of days ago, and my takeaways on it was, you have to be patient with developing these guys. And, you just drafted Sarr last year. And obviously he's not a knockdown shooter. That's just not part of his game yet. But defensively, the kid's a menace. He's going to be a monster. And Jaden Ivey, I've told you guys I'm probably the biggest Jaden Ivey fan. This year was just so inconsistent for him, offensively, defensively, and rotation wise with the coaching. I personally, I've thought about this trade more, and I've thought about the possibility of you could have a starting lineup of Cade, DeJounte Murray, Fontecchio, Sarr and Duren, or maybe you want to put Stu at the 4. I don't know. I like the idea of it on paper, but in the back of my mind, I'm like, I don't want a situation where Asar Thompson and Jaden Ivey bite us in the ass and become stars. Like we've seen this movie before. We've seen it with Chris Middleton. Didn't get any playing time in Detroit. He was a 2nd round pick. Nobody really knew too much about him, and he just turns into this two-way second option on the Bucks next to Giannis. And we're like, why did we do that? Why did we trade that? That could happen with the Sarr. You never really know. And then Spencer Dinwiddie is the one guard that comes to mind where, he couldn't even get playing time over vets under Van Gundy, gets traded, and really blossoms in Brooklyn and becomes this lead guard for the Nets at the time and starts to really figure it out. And every time he played against the Pistons, seems like he beat us on a buzzer beater and he gets, motivated to play the Pistons. I don't want that happening with Jaden Ivey and Asar Thompson. And I understand some Pistons fans hey, I would do that trade 100%. I like Jaden Ivey. I like Asar Thompson, but if we have a chance to get Alex Sarr and DeJounte Murray, a proven vet, next to Cade Cunningham in the backcourt, you have to make a move like that. Me being a fan, and maybe I should be more rational and I shouldn't have my fan cap on right now. I would really hate to lose guys like that and they just develop into stars because, like I said, we've seen it before. But I did want to talk about that. I know a lot of you guys probably have really strong opinions about the trade. Again, this is what the trade was proposed by Bleacher Report. The Pistons would send Asar Thompson, Jaden Ivey, and their 1st round pick, 2024, the 5th round pick, the 5th overall pick in the 1st round, in exchange for DeJounte Murray and the Hawks' 1st overall pick. I personally, I don't know. I think it really depends what the Hawks want to do. I think it really depends where they're at as an organization, what they want to do going forward. But I think all eyes are on the Atlanta Hawks right now to see if they're actually going to blow this up, if they actually are just going to retool and maybe just split Trey and DeJounte Murray apart and just keep one lead guard. But I thought that was probably the craziest storm on social media from you guys of just saying I would not do this trade. Hell no, this is stupid. But like I said, it was 50-50. A lot of you guys are hey man, I wouldn't mind doing a trade like that. That's actually not too bad. But did want to kind of just recap that how I felt about the trade, and I've reflected on it for a day or so, and I still don't like the trade. I just don't think that's the right type of player to pair next to Cade Cunningham. I don't think DeJounte Murray is the type of guard that you should try to pair next to Cade Cunningham. But you guys kind of know my stance on that. I want to transition into free agency a little bit. And there was some news this week from Hoop Site, Michael Scotto. He was talking about free agency. And it was a piece from the Charlotte Hornets. And there was a little tidbit that the Detroit Pistons have interest in Miles Bridges. Now, before I talk about Miles Bridges, I know the off-the-court stuff. I do. I know it. I know what happened. I'm aware of it. Okay? Some people thought I wasn't aware of it. I'm aware of it. I've tried to just keep the conversation strictly basketball, but I understand some people like absolutely not. I don't want a domestic violence, situation part of my basketball team. I get it. I understand it. But I'm going to just try to keep this a strictly basketball conversation. And there's that. I've been very consistent on that stance, and you guys know that. But this is part of the article from Michael Scott. It says the Hornets, Detroit Pistons, Utah Jazz are among notable teams expected to have interest in Bridges during free agency, league sources tell Hoops Hype. So basically, the Hornets obviously want to re-sign him. The Jazz are a team that also have interest in Miles Bridges, and so do the Pistons. I think if the Pistons really want to zero in on Bridges and they feel like that's a forward that can really help their basketball team win more games and help them offensively, I mean, I guess go for it. I think it'll be really interesting to see how they use their cap space and whether that's in free agency trades or whatever. I think he's a name that it's going to be on the Detroit Pistons, at least big board, in terms of free agents that they could possibly target this offseason. Did want to kind of just talk about that for a little bit. I don't want to spend too much time on it because, again, it's just speculation. We don't really know what's going to happen and who the president of basketball operations is going to be and how they view Miles Bridges as well. But this little tidbit from Michael Scotto over at hoopsite.com. So with it being NBA draft, and I've kind of dove in a little bit to the prospects. I was kind of getting heat for liking Ron Holland because he can't shoot. But I just like his defensive versatility. Like if the Pistons didn't have a star, maybe it would work. But I guess the shooting is just, it really kind of deters fans away. And I can understand that. I mean, shooting 24% from three in the G League isn't ideal. It's not great. I wanted to talk to you guys about, targets for the Detroit Pistons with the 5th overall pick. And I'll just talk about 3 prospects that I really like. And, one of the prospects that I do really like at 5 for this team is Reed Sheppard out of Kentucky. I think if you're talking about a guy that could really help this team shoot the ball, I think Reed Sheppard, to me, should be talked about more at 5. Obviously, he did not have a good tournament. We all know that. But if you just watch the body of work at Kentucky this year and you watch a guy that could really space the floor for the Detroit Pistons next to Cade Cunningham in the backcourt, if you want to start Reed next to Cade in the backcourt. If not, that's okay. You can have him off your bench, and he could just be a sniper off the bench. We saw his vertical at the combine. It was, I think, the highest, if I do remember correctly. He had a very high vertical. Obviously, he's only 6'3", but I think that's a prospect that I'm starting to fall in love with more. Just the idea of him being able to hit 3-point shots at a very high clip is something that this team just desperately needs right now. They need more consistent 3-point shooting. And I think a guy like that could really fit well next to Cade Cunningham. I mean, we saw this year, no shot at Killian Hayes whatsoever, but Killian Hayes as the shooting guard next to Cade Cunningham, not known as a knockdown three-point shooter, you really saw the offense suffer because they didn't have a floor spacer. They didn't really have a guy that could knock down a three-point shot consistently. And I think a guy like Reed Sheppard could come into this Pistons offense and immediately have an impact. He's got a nice shot, can play make a little bit, defensively. He's not terrible. I think there's a real chance that the Pistons do keep the pick. Reed Sheppard could be on their radar. Another prospect that I've been, falling in love with a little bit more is Dalton Knecht out of Tennessee. And I think that is just the consensus pick with a lot of Pistons fans right now is Knecht. For the simple fact, like Reed Sheppard, very good shooter. He's older, though. He's 23 years old. And I don't know if that's a thing that Pistons fans really focus on his age. I mean, we traded up for Marcus Sasser last year. I don't really think too many Pistons fans had a problem with that. But I think Knecht is another one of these guys that fits well with this team and could contribute. And there's a lot of similarities in terms of the type of player that I think he could be. I know some people are talking about Tyler Hero. I definitely see that. I think he could definitely contribute. He could come off the bench. He could start. He can shoot. He can play make. He can get to the rim. Really athletic guy. Defensively, he's not really known to be a lockdown defender, and that's okay. I think that when you look at Dalton Knecht, you're not drafting him for his defense. You're drafting him for his athleticism. You're drafting him for his offensive versatility. And I think if you're at 5 and you really want to, surround Cade Cunningham with more prospects that can, make his life a little bit easier, have guys that can score the basketball, I think Reed Sheppard and Knecht should be really high on Detroit Pistons fans' big board in terms of just prospects that the Pistons could possibly, go out and target. I like these two a lot. I know there's some Pistons fans that really like Modest Buzelis, and I do too. But again, it kind of falls under the assumption, do you think he can develop into a good three-point shooter? Because he shot 27% this year with the G League Ignite. But if you go back and watch his high school film, he shot 45%. He thinks that he's a better shooter than what the numbers show with the G League Ignite. We're going to have to wait and see, how it translates. But I think Buzelis is another guy that is interesting. I've told you guys, I think he has a lot of potential. If he hits that, he's going to be scary. Being 6'10", 6'11", playing the forward position, I think is very, very valuable. But I was just kind of thinking in terms of just offensive ready. I think Reed Sheppard and Dalton Knecht make a whole lot of sense for the Detroit Pistons organization right now. I want to know what you guys think, though. That definitely, if you're watching live in the chat, let me know which prospect that you're currently looking at. Is it Stephon Castle? Is it Reed Sheppard? Is it Zach Richey? Hoping that he does fall down to the 5th overall pick, but doesn't look like it. He had a monster game yesterday. He had 28 points, a career high over in the French league. But let me know what you guys are feeling with the 5th overall pick. Which prospects are you really hoping to possibly fall to 5, or maybe you're going to take a reach for a guy maybe a Cody Williams? You never really know, but I'd love to hear what you guys are kind of really read the temperature of what prospects you guys are zeroing in right now. For me, I'm really falling in love with Reed Sheppard and Dalton Knecht. But those are just the prospects I'm, looking at. I did want to transition into draft talk, and it's still, 5th overall pick talk, right? And there was an article from the Detroit Free Press from Amari Sankofa, so shout out to him. It says Detroit Pistons expected to shop their first round pick. And this is part of his article. This is from clutchpoints.com. They wrote a piece citing Amari. And it says the rumor was shared via Detroit Free Press that states the Pistons ownership, including owner Tom Gores, does not want to risk a repeat of last season, meaning all options are on the table to become a better team this offseason. Some of the players in the range for fifth pick in 2024 for Detroit include UConn big man Donovan Clingan, Kentucky guard Reed Shepard, Serbian guard Nikola Topic, and French wing Zachary Richey. According to the Free Press report, the trade market is likely the route for the Pistons to improve their roster. Detroit has roughly $64 million in cap space available, which ranks first in the NBA. This free agency class is not expected to be strong one, with former Pistons Tobias Harris, Nick Claxton mentioned as potential roster additions in that department. So I think that was always a possibility too. When we did fall to 5, that the Pistons would look to shop their first overall or their fifth overall pick. I'm not too surprised with that. I wouldn't be opposed to trading it either. I mean, if there's a trade out there on the table that you feel that can make your team better, maybe you trade down, get a player, and still get I'll just give you a scenario. Maybe they trade down like late lottery and they get a guy like, I don't know, TJ Salong. He's another French prospect that apparently they were high on, but he's not going to be a lottery pick. Maybe they can trade down with the team, get like a older veteran and draft TJ Salong. I think that's a possibility. Or they could just altogether trade out of the pick and just get an impactful veteran on this basketball team that can contribute right now. Kind of sounds like the reporting that Tom Gores doesn't want what happened last year. And also you kind of have to read the room with Monty Williams. Monty Williams has been very vocal with saying he wants grown-ups in the room. And you guys have common sense. He's basically saying, I don't want to babysit an 18, 19-year-old on the court. I work better with veteran players. So it's very interesting that from the Free Press report that, the Pistons could possibly trade out of that fifth overall pick and try to get a veteran to try to use their cap space to get a guy that can help Kate Cunningham now rather than, draft a prospect like a Richey, a Bezelis, a Cody Williams, a Reed Shepard, a Dalton Connect, because they want to win more than 14 games. They want to have, play-in aspirations. It's definitely a possibility. But I don't know. I don't really know how many teams would really be that excited trading up the fifth, given the salary that is attached with the fifth overall pick. It's around $10 million per year. I don't really know if, too many teams that aren't in the top 5 want to trade up for the top 5. I don't know. Am I crazy for really thinking that? Like that, teams don't want to trade up in this draft because I don't know. Like, I really don't know who's going to be there at 5. There could probably be 6 to 10 prospects that could be there at 5 that the Pistons could possibly draft. I don't really know how other executives and other teams around the league view this draft. We've heard this is the weakest draft of all time. I don't really think that. I think it is up there in terms of the weakest draft, but I don't think it's the weakest draft of all time. I think there's a lot of good high-level role players in this draft, but definitely interesting that the Pistons are expected to at least field calls and, shop their pick to see if they could possibly move their fifth pick this year. But I want, just let me know if I'm crazy, because maybe I am. Maybe I am crazy. Maybe I think that no teams are going to want to trade up to the fifth pick. I don't know. I don't know too many teams that want to pay, a $10 million a year salary in this draft. But let me know what you guys think. So, with it being off season, and this isn't news or anything, I decided to compile a list of 10 free agents that I think the Pistons might target this summer. Now, I didn't add guys like James Harden, Paul George, none of those guys, because I just don't think they're coming here. I'm trying to be realistic as possible. And I thought we could react to this list I had, and I'll be reading off all 10 guys that were mentioned that I made in this graphic. So here's the graphic, and I'm going to read every single one of these players. So as you guys can see, the Pistons are going to have close to 65 million cap space, most cap space in the NBA. So this is the list that I compiled. And these are all unrestricted free agents. I didn't have any restricted free agents in here. So you have Malik Monk at number 1. He's 26 years old currently, played for the Kings this year. Nick Claxton, number 2, plays for the Brooklyn Nets. He's only 25 years old. Gary Trent Jr., 25. I believe he plays for the Raptors. I could be wrong. I want to say he plays for the Raptors. You guys can let me know if I'm wrong. You guys usually do. 4 is Kelly Oubre. That's a guy that I really wanted last offseason. He's 28, played with the 76ers this year. Number 5, Isaiah Hartenstein. He's 26. He's currently playing with the New York Knicks. Maybe you need some more backup center help. Who knows? Number 6, Malik Beasley, 27. He played with the Milwaukee Bucks this year. Is another guy that I was pretty high on. Just kind of like a wing that can hit threes at a pretty good clip. Number 7, Derek Jones Jr. from the Dallas Mavericks. He's a guy that I know the Pistons had previous interest in before that they did target Jeremy Grant when he was younger. And if you've been watching the NBA playoffs, Derek Jones Jr. has been amazing for the Mavs. So that's why he did crack my list. Number 8 is Miles Bridges, who's 26 years old. Obviously, we talked about him at the top of the podcast, and there is, mutual interest there with the Pistons and Miles Bridges. Number 9, a former Piston, Andre Drummond, is kind of like a low-end center to possibly bring in to back up Durant to, help him develop. Who knows? Maybe you want to have a reunion with Drummond. Drummond is only 30, by the way. And number 10, Tobias Harris, which, I just mentioned Tobias just for the fact that I think the Pistons are going to go after him. I just hope they don't overpay him. He's 31. But those were the top 10 guys that I was thinking that the Pistons could possibly target. Like, again, I didn't have Siakam in there. I didn't have Paul George. I didn't have James Harden. Because I just don't think that those are realistic routes for the Pistons to target. I really don't, even though they have, close to 65 million cap. They could go out and target those guys, but odds are they could probably reject it. And 64 million in cap, that's a lot of money to spend in free agency if you just want to spend it in free agency. Now, one of the topics before we talked about in the podcast, Amari Sankofa mentioned that the Pistons could use a lot of their cap space, or a majority of their cap space, in the trade market, which is a real possibility. I mean, Troy Weaver, for what it's worth, has used a majority of his cap space during free agency with trades. Now, is Troy going to be still the general manager making these types of moves? Now, that is yet to be determined. We don't know with the new president of basketball ops. He could clean house to Troy and Monty. We just don't know yet. But that was kind of the list I was feeling. Kind of wanted to read the room, see where you guys are at in terms of free agents. I know I did leave off probably some names that I probably should have added, but it could only fit 10 into that graphic. But I want to know what you guys are kind of thinking in terms of possible free agents for the Detroit Pistons, in terms of who they could target in free agency, because they have all this money that they're going to have to spend. I'm under the belief that they signed 2 guys in free agency and use the rest in trades possibly, but that's just what I'm feeling currently right now. But I want to know what you guys think of that. Let me know if there's a free agent that I missed on that list. I'd love to hear like what you guys are thinking in terms of targets that the Pistons could go after. But I did want to wrap up this podcast, you guys. No, we've only been going live for around 35 minutes. I just had some stuff going on today. Couldn't obviously do a live stream like I did last Sunday, so I do apologize for that. But appreciate all you guys, watching for the last 35 minutes. We will see you guys next Sunday. We might have a guest, we might not. Still in talks with them. I don't really know. It kind of depends how they're feeling, but I appreciate you guys again watching this podcast like you guys do every Sunday. I will talk to you guys next week. Hope you guys had a great weekend. Peace.